Hey, hello to all of you out there in the cycling community. This is Shop Talk Tuesday. If it's Tuesday in your neck of the woods, it's Shop Talk Tuesday. Hey, welcome to Annoy Guy Bicycles hanging out in the garage. This is a garage shop podcast of opinion piece of latest articles and news that might be hitting the industry as we love and are afraid of it sometimes. But in any case, welcome to Shop Talk Tuesday. And this is where we're going to talk about some, conversations where behind the walls of a bike shop, where bike shop individuals would hang out and talk about all sorts of things, from movies to their favorite tubes to what sealants that they dislike the most, all those things, right? And it's more of a kind of honest approach, backroom chitter chatter talk. And one of those things that a lot of cyclists out there, they drop off their bikes nowadays and it goes behind the wall and they don't see the magic happen and so forth, or they don't really get a chance to talk to their actual mechanics or that kind of insights. But in any case, this gives you the opportunity as a cyclist to approach us community bike mechanics and bike shop owners. In addition to, this is a safe place for bike mechanics to jibber jabber about their woes within their own industry or their experiences the day to day, and from big topics to small topics. That's what we're here to provide, that good, warm hug, safe space. And then again, here we are in the cycling world. I got Bob, the bike rep, and with his cutter jersey there, he's going to cut through all the riffraff. And you can tell he's kind of been hanging out in the shop as well. Okay, puns. I have not got rid of the Halloween decorations. I might just keep Bob around. So let me know in the chat or in the comments below if Bob is a good addition to the set in the corner. Yes, this is a garage shop, and I'm in a 2-car garage with a bump out. Pretty small space. I've basically taken advantage of every square inch of my shop. So turning around from the wall here, that's the service area that you see me work and do a lot of videos. And across the way, you will see my blinding lights, in addition to a little fit area and shipping area and back stock of bikes all above me. So yes, a shop of this size has its challenges, and we do everything we can or everything I can to make sure it is organized as much as possible, even though it's been a very busy season and kind of very good. That's positive. The shop is too clean. I mean, a clean shop, is organized shop, is more efficient. Yes. In reality, somewhat clutter always builds up here and there. If you're really busy, you'll get to that later when time is appropriate. Over sterilized shops are nice. They're pretty, but sometimes that just is hard to maintain. But once you get there, you can stay there. And if you have the staff, but it's just me and my own little festering mess. And my dad used to always give me a lot of crap back in the Parker Bikes days about my bench, because I would have every tool on the bench wall on my bench and not hung back up. So in the last 35 years of doing this, I've started to put some of those tools back as I'm working on it. So in any case, that's a tech tip. Kind of put the tools away when you're working on them, when you're done with them, or you have a pause to the next one so you know it's muscle memory to go back to that tool. And tool walls is a science in itself, interesting enough, because you want to have all those tools in the right positions and so forth. I'll make a video about that some other day. I actually do have a video, I think 1 or 2 of that in my library. So if you want to catch up on that kind of geek out stuff. And I do reset my tool wall for the most part once a year. So everything gets kind of rearranged, and all case in point where it needs to be as arm reach, and when I'm doing that particular task is the most efficient possible. In any case, yeah, this is Shop Talk Tuesday. If you're just jumping in, we got some of you coming in. Feel free to put some chats in the chat. We got Susan from Kingston. Is that Ontario, Canada? Is that the territory? In any case, Welcome, and thank you for looking from the outside into the United States. I'm in Colorado, Loveland, Colorado, to be precise, in the United States, and I'm a Colorado native, which means I've been here quite a bit of most of my life, and we are very blessed to have the Rocky Mountains as our playground and very many sunny days. So, in any case, thanks for chiming in from Canada. Tim, hey, welcome back. Haven't seen you in the chat in a while. I know you've probably been listening and so forth. Tell Bob to have a drink. Yes, he needs to chill out. He's a little stressed. And then for me, it's too early to do any of that. And for him, Bob, the bike rep, definitely needs some help. And we'll talk about that here momentarily. We got a couple topics I want to hit upon and discuss, and more of my perspective on those from a bike shop mechanic perspective, as well as being in the industry for over 35 years. To hope maybe keep the conversation going, and those who are in it have basically you're not alone. And also scenarios where you have smaller shops where they're, kind of like me, don't really have anybody else to talk to about these things, and our significant others are really tired of us talking about bicycles. Therefore, I've been kicked out to the garage to do my shop talk. Any case, that's one of the drivers. And that's what I was the driver of last Friday. I don't know if it was a preemptive video I did. It's Friday Freak Out or Freak Out Friday. Basically a 1 hour little pop shop. I think I'm going to keep doing those. So just kind of like doing a snapshot of what I'm trying to get done at the end of the week and what stresses that we're dealing with, and trying to get there, and just kind of get a little insights, and hey, and celebrate it's Friday for a lot of those to go out and ride. And hopefully it's nice in your neck of the woods to do that kind of riding. But in any case, one of the main topics is manufacturer. Actually, two of them are manufacturer. Three of them are manufacturer related, I think, if I have it listed correctly. I'll double check where I'm at on that. Manufacturer, closed manufacturer, and another manufacturer being sued. Ooh, that's a good juicy one. And a major brand too. And it just hit anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. But in any case, we are going to dive into, gotta make a timestamp so I know what I'm doing. As the wheel turns. This segment is As the Wheel Turns, So Do the Days of Our Rides. Yes, this is my opinion piece of the local. This is my opinion piece. Redo that. This is my opinion piece of your top news articles within the bicycle industry, as well as other cycling kind of tidbits and so forth. Try to give you my honest opinion, approach, and perspective of being in the industry for 35 years, plus working in a shop and owning a little bike shop, so still in it. But one little caveat for me is I don't have any brands specific contracts, so I don't drink anybody's Kool-Aid per se. I do have a couple people that do help sponsor this particular program, so we'll just dive into that.
It was brought to you by Medem Bikes, where you can find bicycles that won't break the bank. Great brands like Univega and Vin Diesel, but give you a good quality, safe ride to be able to do those extended rides and get into cycling. You'll find a link below with added savings to extend that adventure starting now.
So we're going to go into the first topic, and that first topic is Haro bikes. Who out there remembers Haro bikes? Back in the 90s, they had a pretty cool BMX line. In addition to, they did have some mountain bikes I remember working on in the 90s as well. And those particular bikes, they were kind of chunky, but there was a big rebrand, refresh of Haro of late in the last couple of years of trying to bring that brand back to life. And I did see them at the local, or not local, but local to me in Las Vegas. When I'm out there, there's a Cabda bike show, which they had their show there. And Haro is one of the participants of bike brands that were still hanging out. And they did have a pretty cool line, considering as a bike brand of yesteryear and being rebranded forward. Well, unfortunately, right after the show, which was back in March, they've had some troublesome times. And as well as a lot of us have had troublesome times. Bike manufacturers have been hit pretty hard of the change of the administration putting on tariffs. And this article is from a bicycle retailer and industry news, which is, we call it Brain. And within the Brain article here, it is some pretty good insights of the more newer CEO, Rasmussen. And I know I butchered the name, I'm sorry, but he's been a part of Haro for a couple of years now. And he's trying to get ahead of some bad rumorville coming from possibly a couple of shops, maybe some social media posts and so forth. It doesn't direct that here. It just states that they just want to kind of clarify there was some loss of staff in the spring, which pretty much a big disruption, which a lot of shops and a lot of bike industry leaders per se, like Trek, Specialized, Giant, all of them, and different companies globally have been kind of scaling down, because just in the general market, then you add this whole disruption of tariffs, which is causing a whole big a mess of our bike industry in the States. So Haro also is another company called Mossy, which is more of a road bike line. They have like 4 models or 5 models. I don't remember seeing them at the show in Cabda. Mainly it was more focused on Haro. They had a really good show. I talked to the people there. And as you can see, the Cabda is coming up again as a promo on the actual ad banner here on Brain. But in any case, talking about Haro, I want to bring this up to light a little bit, because there's other brands that have been affected recently within the last year or so. GT, Redline, and Diamondback. I believe most of those were owned by Pond Holdings or Pond Bike, if you look it up. Those lines were shelved, basically put away, and those particular sub companies that they built them up to be, they basically let those people go. Again, losses there, job positions, and those lines, are they dead? Maybe they'll come back. They're strong names, so I think when the things get better, it might be a rebranding or a relaunch of those particular ones. But that's, needless to say, we're in some troublesome times, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. Therefore, those brands may be shelved for a longer period of time. It all depends where the market takes them from there. And the United States market is one of the leading markets of, we just like to buy stuff, and there's a lot of sell products here, and that causes a huge disruption when you can't get products in, or the cost of the products get very expensive to run a business either inside the United States or shipping and selling into or selling to the United States. In any case, what he talks about, and this is a direct conversation from Brain with the CEO, and they did have a follow-up conversation as well. They did bring in a couple new models, which looked pretty hot on the actual bike show, and it was pretty excited to see them come out and about. I mean, you know, we were not a Haro dealer back in the day, but when the bikes I did work on were pretty decent and very comparable to the competition, Trek and Specialized and Schwinn even back in the day in the 90s. But they were really known for their BMX, and there's also some verbiage or rumor mill out there they're getting away from BMX, but actually they are not. They have quite a few. Go reading down the article, they have quite a few SKUs. SKUs are basically how many different items within your library of catalog of stuff that you sell, and they have 250 SKUs just in the BMX category itself, which is pretty robust. And they're trying to just get ahead of this rumor in front of the 600 dealers that they currently have. So it's basically kind of, this article is more of a damage control article in a sense, saying we're still here. They're still bringing in bikes. They're coming. We're still bringing in new models. They're going to be releasing a new e-bike model supposedly here soon as well, introducing the they don't name the model, but it's an e-bike, mountain bike. So with those being said, I mean, a lot of companies like this are having struggles. Like pretty much all of them are having struggles. And this kind of pulls the curtain back a little bit, what's directly affecting their day-to-day business. Even though they're anticipating and had like the best foot forward going into the season, they're very excited about it. It really showed that at Cabda. and hopefully, I hope the best for them. Of course, they're going to do replacements of staffing like everybody to have the right people do the right job at the right time. And those who may have gotten let go were maybe older staff that just were not performing or did not see the vision going forward. Needless to say, it sounded like about a third of their staff was reduced. So hopefully that helps them kind of navigate going forward these damage control times that we're in. So, and they do basically bluntly say the tariffs have really disrupted their momentum, their business, and moving forward. And being a United States company and carrying another brand, that makes it really challenging. But when you look at their road bike model, they built up a couple of road bikes or gravel bikes under the Haro brand, but they also have Masi, M-A-S-I or Masai, however you want to say it. And those particular models, there's only 1 out of the 4 or 1 out of the 5 that has stock online. And that kind of shows that I mentioned before that when you start seeing their inventory reducing to zeroing out, like the YT products and so forth that we've mentioned before, it usually shows pretty good cracking. And this is probably where that rumor mill started, that they're having some troubles and possibly going out. Maybe they are, but they're really trying to get ahead of it and saying, no, we're here, and they don't want the actual rumors to actually kill the brand. That has happened before. Like things get leaked, like they're in trouble, then all of a sudden erodes the confidence of bike dealers, erodes the confidence of consumers, erodes a lot of their marketing and going forward. So that is pretty troublesome. And right now, when there's so much going on, you got to be kind of mindful that what is the real story behind it, and what are they releasing, and how in trouble they are in, because pretty much honestly they're all in trouble at some point or another, because it is just almost impossible to predict, to forecast models, from the start of production to when you're going to be released and actually get into your storeroom floor. I hope the best for Haro. They look like a very good brand. If I was actually a shop that was going to bring in models, I would definitely consider them, especially for my specific market here in Colorado. But I wouldn't let this kind of stain the line, because they're all being stained to this point. Hopefully they're going to recover from this leaked information, if it's even leaked or just made up information about them being in trouble. But then again, they're just trying to address it and so forth. But feel free to, I have the link below in the description, read up on it. Most of their bikes are made in Taiwan and Vietnam, which could be directly affected by who exactly is building them. Is it Merida, or is it Giant, or is it another company in Taiwan? And Vietnam has their own subset of different companies, and who really knows where the breadcrumbs go there. But as we've seen in the news, currently Giant's been in some hot water by labor conditions, and also the tariffs of steel and aluminum is up in the air still. Haven't really heard anything that's going to be affected immediately on that, but it just adds more heartburn and heartache for a lot of these companies just to function and more or less try to navigate a slowing economy that we're experiencing right now. And directly affected by, they saw more sales, which I found interesting in this article, that frames are selling better than full bikes. And I can definitely mirror that in the used market, what I'm experiencing right now, because I'm selling parts and frames a lot more consistently than full bikes. Full bikes, the turns on those have been between 60 to 90 to 120 days. And for bike parts and so forth, it's usually 30 to 60 days. So usually get your money back, or basically your cash flow back, so you can keep continuing. So looking at this as a bike line, seeing frames moving a little bit faster, and just not bikes are more just sitting there. Although they did see earlier in the spring a big, kind of a smaller rush of purchases And they were trying to figure out if it's people trying to get ahead of it before the costs go up on a lot of products, or they're just uncomfortable doing bigger ticket purchases because of the state, either personal or locally or nationally, which I kind of think it's more of the latter. I think a lot of people are kind of holding back on spending, on traveling. There's a lot of indicators out there showing this, and a lot of people are worried about their jobs. And case in point, same here. It's affecting or could affect, and we're seeing it, and I've seen it through my wife's work and what they do, and it's everywhere. So with all those nervous indicators and also the cost of things going up, a lot of people are not going to be buying those bigger ticket items unless they already have the cash flow or can justify it to themselves. So looking at that, hopefully Haro has a little bit better outcome after releasing this, and get it a little more, I would say, community build, talk to their dealers, get them to, steady those tensions, nervousness, and that kind of thing. And hopefully they can move forward and highlight their newer featured bikes and so forth. I really enjoy smaller companies because they kind of listen to more of the market and what people are buying, and don't get too crazy with all their stuff because they're trying to do everything for everyone. So therefore, the smaller companies are really fun to work with and see grow, like Kona and the other ones like, Revel is a really neat one from Colorado. And so Steiner Frameworks in California is a very intriguing, kind of more of the shining light of the U.S. manufacturing bike frames right now. But other than that, that's what we're sitting with the Haro experience, and hopefully get some insights on what that is, and even remember Haro. So in any case, thanks for listening to my jibber jabber about the Haro bikes. But yeah, jump in the comments if you heard of Haro, ridden a Haro, any of that kind of thing. Put it in the comments below, or put it in the chat, and we'll do a little discuss. All right. Yeah, Tim, I believe Haro and Mossy are still together. I haven't seen any indication that they have split. And actually, I don't have to look at the video feed of my old video feed I did at the Cabra show. I think they were there. I just don't remember. It was Las Vegas, so there was a lot going on, more than just a bike show. Heavy Metal Cycles, thank you for joining in. That's awesome for your chiming in here. Thank you. Oh, you're 100% old school BMX. Nice. Bob Haro started out making number plates by heating the plastic and bending it. Oh, nice. Yeah, I was in this puts me back in the 70s. I really wanted to get in a BMX. I was living in an area where they had an actual BMX track, but we didn't live here long enough for me to get into it. And the bike I was purchased from my parents at the time was quite chunky. So even though I did ride on the track, I never did any racing and so forth. But I do remember like the Diamondback of the day with the fancy high graphics and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I don't remember Haro specifically until a later date when I was working on them. But in any case, a lot of those companies, Diamondback, GT, Haro, were forged and made in the 70s and 80s to be these huge bike lines. And then they expanded to, it was like, what was it? There's a Dyno, and then that was part of the GT line. Redline was another really big one. And then there's a super fancy one I can't remember. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of different ones out there over the period of time. And, respectful. And they're still trying to, even Huffy's still trying to rebust a BMX bike, even currently, which is interesting in itself. Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tim, for sending me a picture of GT LTS3. Woo, those are classical suspensions. Yeah, I worked on a few of those when they were new. Those were kind of cool. Very innovative. I remember seeing Hans Ray at the bike show in the 90s. He was the trials performer type competition back in the day. It was kind of cool to watch him do a show back in the 90s for sure. Oh, Hans Ray, Hans Ray. Oh, they just released a new BMX bike that does not interest me. But they did. Interesting. Let's see here. All righty, just looking up on the chat here. Oh yeah, heavy metal cycles. Yeah, old forks are hot. Oh, they did a lot of. That's when like anodizing metals were really big. You know, in the 80s and the 90s, it became more spread over from the engineering of other manufacturer industries, and they've, I remember flashy Kuka cranks, and then they, the Cook brothers or Cook, I think it was Cook brothers, had some BMX parts and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. Then they, just to get anything to be more gee whiz cool factor, to get the other cool kids to want to, have it too, is really a flashy period, as the 80s were. Very, very fluorescent. And all that kinds of stuff. Yeah, another thing too, it's cheaper to, ship a frame than the whole bikes as well. And it is true, somewhat. And a lot of people, I think they're starting to shift to, building a bike up from scratch, almost like the frame and fork that fits them, and then they can customize it to what componentry that they want. Also the fitting bits, C-post, stem, bars, and all those things in the right saddle. Because when you buy new, a lot of that stuff you end up swapping out. And that's where Orbea is making a customized ordering platform for their bikes. And I think there was a company in England that did a lot of fittings, and they're going to make a company that you actually customize builds, maybe a little bit more, but time you take the cost of buying all the extra bits to make the bike exactly where you want it, would be about the same. And this is high ticket dollar items anyway. But looking at that, I mean, I think in the used market, you can buy a frame for $200-300 and then put whatever parts on there and still be a fraction of the price of what new is. And it'd be, either that classic steel ride or that fancy carbon that you saw that you always wanted and you just wanted to bling it out, or you're looking at titanium. Even those prices have gone down. And I mean, you may not be getting the disc brakes Thru-Axle part, but you still will be getting a nice titanium rim brake, and they still have parts out there to support that, new and used. So yeah, I think it's really, in the state of the condition is right now, that's where my parts are selling and my frames are selling and the full bikes are sitting. And looking at, confirmation of another company that's new, doing new manufacturing parts, is kind of mirroring that as well. Definitely the constant uncertainty and low consumer confidence is hurting the local bike shops. A lot of businesses yeah, exactly. It's getting kind of tricky there. Yeah, Susan. Yeah, thank you for chiming in on that for sure. I can see it. There's different, obviously the bike industry is like a onion and layers, right? And you have, the manufacturing to the suppliers to, wholesalers and who sells to the actual bike shops, and the bike shops are corporate owned to independent, and sizes vary, all shapes and sizes, to even to the micro scale size of mine, with just a YouTube channel, chiming in. It's disruptive on all levels. Luckily for my perspective and my business, it's a little more weathering the storm per se, leveraging service and used products, where Haro can't leverage service or used parts. So companies like that have to navigate within their little ecosystem, and it's horribly disruptive. I mean, talking to other industry, the people in the field where they actually are trying to forecast, trying to do all this stuff. It's more damage control all across the board, and just trying to do what they can do, even though they may take a little bit of loss or less of a profit than they anticipate. And some of it, might be a good direction to kind of make these companies rethink what they need to be producing, listening to the actual customer base versus trying to shoot out the new expensive, high fancy widget that costs $6,000 to $10,000, $20,000, where there's obviously a very small market for that right now. In any case, that's where the heartburn is setting in for the industry. Woo! And that's why Bob has really lost a lot of weight. Oh boy. But yeah, so that is the Haro. And there's a lot of companies like Haro, small, and they're just trying to get through all of it. And some of them do still sell to bike shops directly. It looks like Haro and Mossy, they do sell direct to consumer as well. Not sure how that all plays out. And hopefully they're set up to do so more in a proper fashion versus something that you get it, you still need to take it to a shop to be worked on. But our best of luck to them, and hopefully they can navigate through these challenging times. Oh, we're going to talk about another fun, interesting twist of events here. Let me get it fired up here. So I just saw an article pop up under Pink Bike. Pink Bike is a more of a mountain bike platform, and they do have videos on YouTube and all that, and Friday and so forth. Kind of cool stuff. And once in a while, there's mostly just race-related things. But in any case, we're going to talk about the CSS carbon manufacturer. They took a hit, and basically they shut down. They're based out of Utah. They did a white label of rims, carbon rims, specifically for some were from Bontrager at one point, but Chris King, Revel Bikes, and various others. And then we also saw a big insurgent of other companies stepping up to the plate to help cover crash replacement, like Reynolds came in, Reynolds wheels. They came in kind of like, we'll take care of that. Revel will take care of that too. Even Chris King had a statement on their particular, try to offset maybe the scariness of warranties and crash replacement that's going to be left behind from this white label company. But this white label company, interesting enough, is they have their own brand, Forge+Bond. And Forge+Bond, this is off of a Pink Bike, and there'll be a link below to read it up on yourself. And, selling all their equipment off. I mean, everything. It's like basically massive liquidation. Well, here comes carbon paddle boards. I mean, they're based out of Utah as well, so probably down the street. And this article is very interesting because it does, reflect the CSS composites and the company just crashing. And then all of a sudden, this other company is either acquiring, it's not much detail or some to probably come along about how the popularity of paddle boards are becoming huge. And they have some carbon applications of those where they're either grabbing the equipment or people that work there and that kind of thing to manufacture carbon paddle boards. Will they make rims again? Not too sure. The switch, they have a name. It's FB Sports. So who knows? It wouldn't be a hard press to, you're making one thing and then being diverse, where apparently these bad boys, what I was reading, the carbon ones go up a couple $100 for a paddle. I mean, you got to be serious about your paddle board, pickleball paddles. I'm saying paddleboard, like paddling a board. Oh, excuse me, pickleball paddles. In any case, ooh, look at that fancy pickleball paddle. Man, I gotta re-edit this at some point, right? In any case, this is the bike mechanic trying to do YouTube. And then again, I don't do pickleball or paddleboard. So therefore, in any case, these pickleball paddles are a $199 US, which is pretty, I assume they're probably the higher end stuff. And this, if you don't know the sport, it's a sport that got re-energized for the older communities, where they used to be really into tennis because tennis was huge in the 70s, and that generation it make it a little bit easier for them to actually participate in that particular style of sport without having the physical physique to do so and still have a good time. We have several of those in our community, which you probably have several in yours too. The funniest one is downtown Denver. One of the communities got all bent out of shape because they didn't like these guys making so much noise playing, early morning. So a whole bunch of hungover, grumpy people didn't want, the pinging of pickleball being played in their local park at a certain time. But in any case, that was resolved. But in any case, it's interesting to see how brand manufacturers shift gear to so point. I don't think this is related to the company. I think the company is completely gone, but I think the other company is forged out of this or took part in the equipment and so forth. But it does kind of show you how things change and they cross over in different kind of popular manufacturing and so forth. But in any case, that caught my eyes, like pickleball. Put themselves in a pickle, and there was a play on words on that too. So bad jokes. But in any case, it's in one of those sports, like you get out there, and get some exercise. And, that's where the e-bikes have really helped out with a lot of older community peeps here locally, even because they want to be out riding their bikes, which, this is another thing that helps them to keep them active and so forth. So I'd see it's a win, but in any case, it's interesting. But if you're not in a sport, you're not in a sport. Not going to do. In any case, I thought that was pretty interesting topic there of, rehashing wherever it may lead, but hopefully the job losses will be gained by that within the carbon manufacturing, because they've lost a few people that knew what they were doing, and it is very disruptive if you have a really very specific niche skill set like carbon manufacturing, that kind of thing. It's not like you can just go down the street and find somebody else to do it. Either you rebrand it and make it yourself, or you sometimes have to uproot and go where the jobs are. And usually that includes moving your whole family and so forth. So hopefully they were able to find some job placement for those individuals that are working for the carbon rim company to now move over to a different one and take some of those skill sets and technology and all that. So it's not completely lost. And at some point, then maybe they will find themselves back into either that's if they're interested, getting back into the cycling industry. So there's bigger stories behind this. In case in point, there's always has been. Even with Lafayette, Specialized shut down one of their how was it, experience center or something that in one of their offices here, and they did give offering to those who were working there to relocate to California and Morgan Hill, which a lot of times that'd be a huge, if you have a family, if you're not a single individual that can just uproot and move to where the work is, it is a conversation with your family. It's like, well, maybe I'll look for something else, or somebody else takes the lead, or maybe the other spouse has a very professional job there too. So it's disruptive. Let's just put it that way. And that company did a lot of shrinkage, some quietly and some not so quietly, listed in news outlets like the Bicycle Retailer. But it's it's a lot more to come than, more quiet and crickets in a sense. So that being said, there's going to be some serious major disruptions for the manufacturers for sure, because they are the most directly affected by the current state of the state. Bike shops, I've seen a few, they're actually hiring store managers, sales associates, always, trying to, they're maintaining, they may be shifting their business model to some, or leveraging it in like the service and that portion, and the used bikes, leveraging in that direction, where they're keeping the lights on and keeping the momentum, and selling what they have and what can get, and they're doing okay. I don't think any of these bike shops, independent bike shops, are going to have any banner years whatsoever. It's not going to be a huge profitable year. That might be enough to be able to pay their staff and keep in business and just hit the status quo. The smaller shops that do primarily all service, and I've seen some channels like this on YouTube where they're having great years the last couple of years and going into a very strong year because of the service needs of really elevated. And in addition to the e-bike portion of the industry is still there, still growing to some level. There's still rebates here in Colorado where you can take advantage of saving some money. And even though it changes at the first of the year, it's still a rebate about the half as much, but they're still driving that e-bike retail, and a lot of service is going to relate to that for sure. And we've seen that, and I've seen a couple shops, and I've talked to a couple shops, and I do have a shop local to me, which is Precision E-Bike. And Josh there, he's been there he's been in industry for over 20 years. I have a video in my library interviewing him, and it's, he's growing where a lot of shops are shrinking. And, Go Guava is another one in Pennsylvania where they're growing, but you got to be careful in your growth. It's like, this is just a flash in the pan, and you don't want to overextend yourself. So I think a lot of shops have really kind of realized pretty quickly, it's like, even though the landlord's saying you can take out these like 8 other spaces for real cheap to, expand your real estate, it's not a really good time to, add any more overhead to your business. Take the profit, put it in, and reinvest it into your own business. Either it's in better tooling, maybe looking for a new location that you purchase, keeping your costs down. That's the only best way, or buying or owning your inventory, or investing into used, because that's what's selling, whatever. But as long as you're keeping it small, I think is the best practices. Where that's even the same case when you look at Trek and Specialized. They're reducing their locations, they're thinning out, and part of that was designed by design from hearsay. And again, this is my opinion piece, but shrinking, they have to lose the stores where they're not making a profit, and there is a loss of jobs with that. But that was kind of the flood market where when they're opening retail, when you're looking at big box, and they are, I would consider big box retail, because they have many locations. Same concept as Performance Bike back in the day. Basically, you flood the zone and you pull back what doesn't work. And apparently they had big enough purses, money to be able to do that and take the loss, but they think their gains will over exceed what they're going to be in losses. So it's a long game for them. Same concept of Blockbuster Video back in the day, but they got burned over a period of time and made some bad decisions, and the market changed on them, and then they didn't change with it, or wasn't ahead of it. So needless to say, nobody's safe. Nobody can weather the storm without being unscathed. And if they don't do anything smart every day, they're going to have some really troublesome times. All of them. And that's, not that I want any of them to go under by any means. I want them, obviously I want them all to do better and be better for their communities, be better for cycling community, period. And needless to say, what they've done on some of the bikes and, marketing and all that in the last 15 years has been kind of weird and questionable from where I came from back in the 90s, but in late 80s. But needless to say, I don't want them to completely go away. If anything, they have the position and the power to do positive change, either help with infrastructure of local communities for cycling and for outdoor activities, in addition to other things, advocate for cycling communities like people for bikes, which is another huge, great resource for a lot of those bike shops and bike brands alike to kind of work towards positive things. And when there's a scenario where we're here in the States where they're constantly just right now trying to pull away everything, take everything away from you or away from those opportunities, it's really kind of troublesome. Therefore, we're going to need to rely on the bigger influences in the room to speak and do and act. That's going to be the best respect pieces, not the new latest $20,000 bike you can put on the floor, but how about you help some shops build up their communities, be the leader in that brand, not just be the race elites, be the community builders, because quite honestly, that's where majority of your income is going to be coming from. So anyway, tap into that. If anybody's in the corporate world listening to this, take note. People are like, they don't like walking into a shop and all they see is $5,000 to $10,000, $15,000 bikes. They want to have a warm, hug community feel. So therefore, there's going to be some changes. And, a lot of shops have already changed. A lot of independent bike shops have changed their tune. Because before all this, I've talked to shops and they'll be like, no, we're not going to even touch used, all that. They're getting enough income from everything else, which is fine. But I said, there's always an opportunity for this when, look into this and you actually bring in lower price points and so forth. Well, now they're in that scenario. Like, okay, we need to leverage this. And I've seen a lot of shops do and be successful at it to a point where, yep, this is where we're going to be for a while. So you better change with it or you're done. You need to be doing something else. So, and there's a whole bunch of different, complicity issues with the cycling community, between the price points was usually the biggest, pain part of most of the cycling communities, but also there's a little bit of arrogant attitude still there, or not quite matching with the niche of the riders and that kind of thing. So I think we need to all take note and learn from it and move forward. Yeah, exactly. All right. So let me queue up my last article bit here. This one is, it's interesting. And it's interesting that it's brought up to light. I don't think everything like this is brought up to light. And I bring this up not because I want to target anything of this company, but actually what I want to do is target the conversation on the complicities of we're heading into or have headed into, and with my customers alike have experienced and frustrated with. In any case, so one of the big brands has a big lawsuit, and a big enough lawsuit that actually got into the media, which is listed here in Bicycle Retailer. And within a Bicycle Retailer, headlines is pretty damaging in itself. Man sues Specialized over injuries caused by alleged and mountain bike motor defect. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in this short article, which doesn't give you a whole lot of information except for the guy went riding and he's lives in Washington State, rode in Oregon, and on a more of a flat descent, flat out ending of a descent, the bike revs up and he wipes out and gets hurt. This, mountain biking, well, let's just roll back to the beginning. Bicycling is dangerous, period. It is a sport or an activity that you're putting your two legs and your body on two wheels and hoping to balance. And I've been thinking about this, and I think our parents have been trying to weed out children from the beginning to put us on these devices. They're great devices when you get to it, but we all have crashes, and make sure nowadays we wear helmets. And a lot of us didn't make it through the 70s, even though they don't talk about it. They just say, oh, you know, we rode around without helmets. Well, you never heard about the stories of the people that got hurt, because, you know, nowadays it's all over. Any case, going back to the point of this particular one, I feel bad for this individual getting hurt. You broke 7 ribs. And then there's a little story about him going to the ER, and there's like, they didn't find anything. Then he goes back to the hospital, and they find it later. I'm not going to contest that. Some people may think it's kind of fishy, whatever the case may be. And then even talking about the actual and again, I'm not an e-bike specialist, so I'm not really going to pick on the e-bike performance and the cause, and even the turn of what do they call it? It's they call it a manufacturer flaw of the spun out. And spun out, what I found out is when the motor still keeps going after you're pedaling for a short amount of time to help you get over specific obstacles and so forth. And those who are or work on e-bikes probably know about this, and it's technically a feature on a lot of newer stuff. It doesn't really say how old the Evo was, what year it was, what iteration of it. Probably does in the actual listing of the lawsuit against Specialized. But here's what I really take away from this. And granted, I feel bad about the guy getting hurt, and Specialized is, basically being pointed at for this actual incident and so forth. And if you've been in the industry for as long as I have, you've seen all these different crazy lawsuits, even to the point where a poor child got killed riding at night on a bike that the parents built for them, but they went and sued the company because it didn't say you can't ride at night without lights. There was no warnings that you need to ride at lights. So there's where I'm getting at here. Unfortunately, there was a loss there, and it felt devastating even to this day. And that's over like 3 decades ago when I remember this lawsuit. But it really kind of sparks to me, like, there's a level of common sense that needs to be looked upon here. Not necessarily trying to pick on either Specialized common sense or the rider's common sense, but there's needs to be more of a generalization of more educational about these devices that we're selling, and making sure the customer is very comfortable and understanding how it works. So looking upon how now Specialized and Trek are following the same guidelines of Canyon is selling direct to consumer, there's a lot more product that people are buying and putting together themselves and riding with very minimal to little education about the bike that they're riding. Most cases of those people are usually been riding a lot already, and they're very familiar and research the heck out of it, because, I mean, who wouldn't research the heck out of something that's over $2,000 going to your front door? But people sometimes don't. So there's a problem, a miscommunication, education about products that may have certain features or not features, or maybe they were contacted about a defect on this particular one. Maybe it spun out too long, that kind of thing, that caused these particular issues. And it sounds like this particular issue, if the motor is spinning out too long, the motor needs to be replaced. It's not somewhere in the software. But anyway, any case, this individual is hurt. But what it brings to my attention is the educational of these new high fancy, high technical products that the bike industry is producing, and relying on bike shops or just consumers to educate themselves of how these should perform, how they should be maintained, and to be safely ridden. So that's what really strikes me. And obviously, with any lawsuit, with any argument, there's two sides and there's details to those. But Specialized in this particular one, very interesting. I saw another YouTube channel bring up this particular lawsuit and get a little more backing. They're an e-bike channel, so they add more information of how the motors work and so forth. They're a little more skeptical on the actual rider, but that doesn't make it right or wrong. I think there needs to be a lot more education portion of how the e-bike motors work for the customers to use. It's kind of like, it's like giving a person a motorcycle to drive and not they never ridden a motorcycle before, or they've ridden bicycles or maybe a moped, but the particular motorcycle may have different features on it, so it's like, and with motorcycles, you got to get a license to ride them. So there's no license training, learning, vetting to even do bikes. Basically, we just get on them and go. And, we're taught how to ride bikes from, parents or idols in our lives to get us on these great things that liberate you to get around town and go do fun things and different experiences. Could be very dangerous. And we always known that. And now they're adding more complicity. So if I got an e-bike and I was not paying attention and not realizing that it gives me an extra little shootout at the end of pedaling stroke, assuming they would stop, it could be dangerous. And it's, learning how to ride with a motor. It's always a little startling when you're riding on different e-bikes, which I have done, test ride on a few here and there, not completely oblivious to them, but it is kind of like a little quick learning factor as you're riding. And I'm an experienced rider. I've been doing bike mechanicking and mechanicking over a long period of time. And so if you have somebody that's maybe not as in tuned, could cause some serious damage. But anything, this does, like other articles, when a big thing hits, hopefully other companies, possibly Trek, Giant, Pond Holdings with all their brands, also Canyon, maybe kind of consider or give a little more of an insight of like, you need to watch these little videos of how these perform before you even get on the damn thing and try to kill yourself, because it's dangerous, and it can be even more dangerous for those who are riding. So not to target Specialized, but I want to target the actual concept behind what is the learnings from this. And a lot of big companies, their learnings, unfortunately, have to be done by a lawsuit to change their ways, or change, giving light and perspective. Does this guy have a legit case? Possibly. Does Specialized have a good defense? Possibly. But the learning and the doing better for manufacturers should really take a look at, like, okay, you're providing these cool different toys, or experiences, and do they really know how to use them? How's it work? Yeah, there's owner's manuals. People are probably not going to read those, like nobody reads those. But there should be some training at the store showing you how, and actually showing you in real time how these things work, what to expect, what to anticipate, and for riding, especially on e-bikes, to make it safe for them to ride. We did this very simply back in the 90s we called it a fit. We put it on a trainer, but it was really just kind of teaching individuals how to use the shifting, because shifting back then, we had a lot more gears and had some complicity to it, what they may have not been used to with old school 10-speed friction shifters. You got index shifting, and you got 3 up front and all these things. And then we took the time of adjusting the seat and all that. But that could be done too, of like, here, ride it on a trainer, mimic training and feeling how that motor kicks in and off and how to adjust and all that kind of thing. Because the last thing I think is having, your grandma get on an e-bike thinking it'd be a lot of fun, and all of a sudden it has a spun out on it and they go flying into traffic, or off to the side of the road. So it's, those kinds of things. I mean, they may know how to ride a bike, but do you know how to ride this bike? That's the thing that's kind of interesting. And then some of them have throttles to them, and you've seen these guys on bike paths and gals, and they're like, That just looks like disaster waiting to happen. And at some point it will, because if they're not a skilled enough rider, knowing that loose gravel, they'll slide and spun out on pavement. Before you know it, you're on the side of the bike path without a helmet with concussion. And then you and your family roll up and you're like, that's a great, experience for your family to see this happening. So, I think there's a lot of layers to this particular article that can be unfolded to help cycling community be better. Manufacturing, being education, or putting more educational out there for how their bikes are being used or how they should be used, different models. I mean, heck, an e-bike and a road bike is going to perform differently than on a hybrid, and then it's completely different on a mountain bike in this case, for sure, and suspension and what they're meant for and do. And it's kind of like the individuals that are putting this putting these bikes out are very knowledgeable of all their stuff, which is great, but they're not looking at it in the perspective of a general consumer, lens, because they really have to think about, okay, what's the things to be cautious about this particular bike and the motor and how it rides and how it performs and all those things, and then somehow get that through a test group of individuals that don't know nothing. And then figure out where the missing pieces are and help educate down the line. And then there's, obviously there should be some level of common sense for the consumer to go, yes, I need to know how and what to expect and how to lightly ride this first before I go off-roading. So there's no mention of how skilled this rider was, what year it was of the bike, has he done a lot of riding, has he not done very much riding, has he had an e-bike before, any of those things, right? So there's a lot of different variables to this particular thing to unpack. That is the same case in point when a customer walks into a bike shop and trying to navigate what e-bike they want to get. And that relies and responsibility upon that bike shop, salespeople and mechanics alike, to educate them to that level. And that's just on the e-bike motor and how it performs. How about the rest of the bike? Thru-Axles, how you fix a flat. Does this come tubeless right off? And what is in what's being used for tubeless, and how those complicities of working on a standard bike where they may know how to switch out those tubes and tires on a standard tube and tire system versus a tubeless. There's a lot of disconnect, and that's where you get people really frustrated with bike shops. And can you blame them? Because there's a line of, maybe I should have been told about this, and then again, bike people and bike shop people are humans. I mean, they forget. But I remember even 20 years ago, we would have a checklist to give a customer on a me bike. This is before even bikes came out, of how to do the quick release, how to take the front wheel off, because of course it was related to a lawsuit and somebody got hurt. How to shift the gears, how to wear, how to put on your helmet correctly. Of course, there's lawsuits related to that. So all these things on the checklist was related to incidences that put that on the actual checklist itself. I guess you need to add a bigger checklist to that particular bike. And that checklist needs to be derivative by the company selling direct to consumer. Because here is the problem with the direct to consumer sales is, number one, the bike needs to be assembled correctly to be safe to ride, which a lot of them have videos and it makes it a little bit easier. Sure, fine. But how to ride that particular bike is another thing. And I'm not sure if any of these companies, if at all, and let me know if I'm wrong in the chat or comments below, are they following up in a personal call or video chat with those individuals buying those bikes? Hey, how's your bike riding? Did you have any questions? Did you get the fit right? I got a laundry list of things to go over with you to make sure your specific bike, and knowing the details of that specific bike, is that kind of detailed information being conveyed to that person verbally. Because a lot of people may not, people learn in different ways. Some people like to read about their stuff and that's how they learn, and that's okay with them. Some people are visual and they need to be explain the details, and that's where the other part definitely needs to be covered. So I remember the checklist, the paper portion of it, but we were physically there to show them how to take the quick release off of the bike. Some of these bikes, people don't even know how to do a Thru-Axle. Oh, and if they do know how to use a Thru-Axle, do they know they have to have a torque wrench to make sure it's at the proper Newton meter range to torque that, or they'll mess up their $5,000 bike? So, it's and torque specs on all the other parts, cranksets, pedals, cassettes, all those perspectives need to be looked into by detail. Case in point, I've had recently a chance to work on 4 brand newish bikes, and there was something wrong with them. Pretty decent wrong with them out of the gate, being built by a corporate store. Like 2 of them, all the hubs are tight. They weren't adjusted, which in case in point, down the road, your hubs are going to burn out if they're not adjusted correctly. Another one, the torques on the crankset was way too loose on an e-bike. So there's a lot of things going on there. You don't want any bolts that are less than, there's 50 Newton meters on that crank arm bolts, and they were not even close. And another one, I'm looking at them because they're all still here in my shop. And another one, like the front hub was too tight and the front brake was dead. It's a disc brake with hydraulic, and it's a off brand. So it's not a Shimano or SRAM, it's Rush, whatever brand proprietary that they found to be built in Cambodia, I'm assuming. And it's stamped mineral oil. I'll flush it out. It didn't really take me long. I haven't put it back together yet to test it, but I can tell by bleeding it firmed right back up, right? It was like come back to life. So it should be okay once I, do all my other testing when I put it all together. But case in point, that person took it to the shop that they bought the bike from, and they're like kind of passed him over. When he came to me, and they're having me do some fittings and stuff that the shop doesn't do, and some other upgrades to it. But downright, they bought 3 bikes for 6 bikes from him, and now he's downright pissed at that shop because of 2 weird interactions with the service department. And we're talking about customers that bought, let's see, close to 10 grand, 12 grand. 2 customers or a couple. That's painful. So, just that case in point. So talking about doing better, and this was a shop that was doing well with customer interactions and had great experiences, and all of a sudden feels like it's changed. So if that's changed in your local shop or your shop, and you have 1 and 2 individuals that may not be doing the right teamwork or been educated and alienate a customer, beware, because that alienated customer is going to go to another shop, because they're going to not stop riding, and they're not going to stop buying in this case, and they're going to go probably right down to your competitor and see how experiences they have. And granted, that's always been the case. 1 bad experience from interaction with a customer, you're not going to win that customer back over. Usually you won't, unfortunately, but that's the human beings in us, right? So and you have somebody, people, I've had bad days. I've had, really close friends that worked in bike shops have bad days. And man, I was left with the stick of dealing with the irate customer and doing everything I can to make them not hate us as much, because they're still going to hate you. But it's not like you give up, but it's just one of those things. And I don't even know if they knew they alienated the customer. And that's the thing. It's like they're kind of like, oh, it's okay, kind of Passover thing, turned out to be a little bit more than that. So I implore you, if you're in a service department or a service rider or a bike shop owner, this state and the state, go the extra mile with every customer, with every minute of that interaction. He'll keep you from losing tens of thousands of dollars of business. It's simple as that. all they had to do is like, oh, let me double check that. Oh, let me see take a little bit more effort of double checking a sealant possibly leaking on a new bike that costs $6,000, or a bike that they bought within the last year, but the brake is dead on it. I mean, you have to pump it to cycle up. On an e-bike, mind you, it's 60 pounds on top of a 200-pound rider on a torque of a motor. Those damn brakes better work at the highest performance, because that could be another 7 broken ribs against that brand, because they took it to the shop, they didn't do anything about it. So it's safety and common sense and being part of the cycling community, not being, I'm trying not to be on too much of the soapbox here, but I've seen cases like this year in, year out, being in the cycling industry, where it is hard to do. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, and not every interaction is perfect, but so we all need to, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I take it a little extra on every bike I work on, even though it came in for that thing that may be wrong, but I'm like, oh, I better do it, because I want to make sure, number one, they're safe, and number two, they have the best riding experience. And I may or may not charge for it. Most likely not. I'm not, I'm there. I'm like, okay, but I'll give it a light, like, check this out. I found this. Be mindful of it. If you have any issues, let me know. That goes miles and miles with a customer, and also the cycling's experience, versus not even knowing about it because you passed it over, and then they all of a sudden get hurt by something, and they're like, oh, I just had that bike tuned up. They didn't catch this, which they may or may not know what was listed in that tune-up. So, but every tune-up that a bike shop's got to think about it this way. Even though your less expensive tune-up only carries a small laundry list of things that you do, you're still kind of responsible for the whole enchilada. So, got to be be careful with that. And cyclists too, be a little more, hopefully the shops that you're taking your bikes to be worked on, they're giving you the over beyond experience of working on the bike. May seem like sometimes they're finding all sorts of things wrong with it, and you're like, they're just like nitpicking. But if they convey it correctly, like, they'll tell you why and maybe what happened and what need to look for to fix it, or what have you, to make you feel more comfortable and confident of their skill set and what they're trying to do. And some of the stuff too is like, well, you're at this level of chain stretch, for example, this might be coming down. It's up to you if you want to switch out and that kind of thing. But this might save you the cost of a cassette, and the cassette is X amount, or what have you. And as mechanics who are skilled enough, we can see a drivetrain and how it's been worn down to identify those particular riding styles ish. I mean, I have one, it's an extreme case, but he's a former racer, and he doesn't shift, even though he does shift between 3 gears. He should just have a 3-speed, but he wears out his big ring to nubbins on the teeth. He has 2 up front. The second gear is completely untouched, and in the back he has the stack of gears, like the bottom 3 are just worn out to nothing, but the rest of the cassette is brand new. And this is all Dure stuff. So, and he knows it. But as a mechanic, you're like, that's going to skip. That needs to be replaced. It's like boom, 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 boom. He knows it. I know he knows it. So he's fine. But if he was a brand new customer, I'd be a little more. So it looks like the drivetrain is being a little worn, a little bit longer than this. Do you shift very much? Start asking questions. So that kind of thing. But in any case, it's like one of those scenarios. And that's why I bring the specialized piece up, because it just is concerning about how this happened, and it strikes a lot of nerves on a lot of different touch points within the cycling industry, as well as bike shops, and how they are conveying that information to the cyclists, and are they fully aware of how it works and so forth, not just to pass over like, like, do you really know? Like, this could hurt you. You can really get hurt not knowing how this is used. And, and also just a riding experience. Like, I don't know how much education they're giving people on a brand new bike that comes tubeless and set up tubeless right off the gate to more of a novice rider. And you're thinking, well, they should be known, but if they're spending $6,000 on a bike, they should be should have been riding more and so forth. Not all cases. Sometimes some people just have the money and they want something that's a little bit nicer. And this is the kind of style of riding they want. E-bike, road, full carbon, disc brakes. Did not know it came tubeless, but also the tires aren't holding air. Or if they were told it didn't register, they don't even know what the whole concept of tubeless is. And that's kind of like, oof, that kind of stings a little, right? I mean, spend a lot of money and all of a sudden your tubes are just going flat and like, oh, you just need air. As a mechanic, you're like, oh, it just needs to be aired up and spin it. We'll keep an eye on it. Not going into the little more level of detail, like, so what a tubeless system is you have a rim tape that's a little bit different and it has a valve that kind of plugs in there and it's a liquid. And oh, by the way, every 3 to 6 months, you need to refresh that because it dries out, especially in Colorado dry climate. I don't think those conversations are really happening in that way with some of these customers, especially they ride, but are they like Joe Racer or Bob the bike rep? I don't think so. It's probably not. And especially if they're busy, which they're probably not busy right now, but they should need to, at this point, review on all the new tech related to the riders and their riding experience, and making sure they're comfortable understanding that bike and how it rides and so forth. My premise of my bike shop, coming out of just refurbishing used bikes and providing used bikes under $1,000 that includes a static fit, blew a whole bunch of people away. Like, they were amazed. I've only had a few people are like, nah, I don't want the bike. That's fine. But most of the time, I would say when I was selling bikes at the height of it, about 70 to 90%, depending on the week, would want a fit because they've never been fitted to a bike, even just on the static fit level. And understanding the concept of seat height and seat tilt and the bar reach and all that and whatever bike they were getting. And that was like a missed disconnect, and not given the best experience possible of getting into riding and safety and all those things. And knowing that, while you're there, let me show you how the years work and so forth. Yeah, no idea what trim was. Half the people don't. Most of the new people don't know what trim is because it's all one by. There's an industry joke there. They don't go 2 ways or 3 ways. Kidding. Joking aside on that. But yeah, I think there's need to be a lot more safety focus and safety relays on informational pieces of the bike in detail. And Grant, I know some shops do a really good job about this, of like clinics and so forth on bikes. And, that, follows the suit of the auto industry. They have like little things that you go sit on and learn what your car does. So it needs to be more into that, but cycling doesn't have airbags. It doesn't have, safety crumple zones. Bicycles, you're just hanging out there and you fall. Everybody's fallen, ridden bikes. And when you're younger, you bounce. And when you're older, like me, it's a hard thud. And if it's a hard service, something cracks. And then you're off to the ER. A 10-minute conversation by your very communicative, very warm. No, I don't want to make it weird. More informative mechanic, sales associate, manager, store manager, whatever. Should be multiple touch points with that particular consumer. I know it kind of sounds lengthy, and it can be on some experiences on that, but a couple quick tips on certain things as they're going out the door with their new bike could save them a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, as well as other pain. Any case, I'm rambling on. But in any case, and I've said that a couple times already, that, it's like, I mean, every bike shop person that's actually listening to this, I know they've had a couple incidences where they're probably in the back of their mind going, I was wrong. I screwed that one up. And customers, same things like, oh, maybe they did tell me about that. But scenario where you basically want to build upon your community and help it out, try to be the solution here, not the part of the problem. In any case, all right. Need to drink some coffee. Hold on here. Talking about direct to consumer.
Shop on Amazon. I do have a Amazon store, like the latest pick, basically, of products that are on sale, that kind of thing, and various other parts and tools and so forth that I suggest using within those particular categories. Check that out. Go through, and even if you don't buy the product that I suggest and you find something else that fits your needs better, or your grocery list, or whatever you end up buying, I get a little kick. So that's a good opportunity for you to get something, and I get something that helps support me doing what I'm doing.
Thank you for listening to that. And yes, the link will be below. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Any case, yeah, direct consumer, part of it. Buyer beware, only goes so far. So in any case, let's look into the chat here and see if any of you guys have any strong opinions or just want to talk about it. Oh, Josh from Precision E-Bike, thank you for joining in. Thankfully, most of all used bikes, a motor cutoff switch. Oh, that stops the power when you hit the brakes. Oh, that's a good one. Keeps the rider from staying, keeps the rider in control. Easy peasy. Yeah, maybe this doesn't have that feature on that particular bike, or something was wrong with the motor. I mean, it was implied that they Specialized knew about the issue, but maybe they did not. I don't know. It's a lot of question lists, but that is a good note. It's like if you hit the brakes, it shuts the motor off, which keeps you from going out of control. So there's a lot more safety perspectives of that. And the question would be like, on bikes are being directly shipped from like AliExpress, Temu, or even Amazon. Do they have those features and an educational piece? And I'm sure Josh at his shop, even though he didn't sell the bike, he was like, are you aware how this works? Because he has to have the conversation with every bike repair that he does. So that's another level too. You just can't assume that they know everything. And actually you sound more knowledgeable of what you're doing when you do explain or do ask them those questions. So it's a win-win. They learn something if they need to, and it gives you a validated, validation to your expertise. That really it's huge, that perspective. Oh, heavy metal cycles. Yeah, once I test rode an e-bike missing a front axle nut. Oh my God. Let's hope I only buy one. Oh, yeah, that would be disconcerting. Yeah, case in point, the one bike I'm working on too, it has a Thru-Axle-ish style front, and the rear looks like a Thru-Axle, but it's this fancy Allen bolts both sides. So if you're torquing one, it's not a Thru-Axle. You got to do both. So yeah, I've test ridden or looked at bikes come in and like, you sure anybody can get hurt riding this thing? Yeah, check all those bolts, torque all those parts, especially on new bikes. They're built in a manufacturer plant. I mean, it's an assembly line. Sometimes it's automated, and those automated, machines sometimes need to be recalibrated. So a lot of those things, should be double checked for safety for sure. Especially if you're working with more particular materials like carbon fiber and titanium and all. They really need those torque specifications to be correct. Make sure it's safe for everybody, for sure. Oh, Forbidden Colossus. Yeah, that's the cutter shirt or jersey and shorts. I outgrew them faster than I wore them out, so Bob gets to wear them. I look like Homer Simpson when I put this thing on. Just need a Duff beer and call it good. I got a whole bunch of stretchies. It's cutters. But anyway, yeah, that's from the Breakaway film. From Breakaway, and I think the character's name was David or something like that. I was thinking calling him the character's name, but I think Bob Bob's a little better. Hey, Bob. Rolls off the tongue a little better. Also, my daughter called him Bob, based off of Beetlejuice movie, Bob. Yeah, test rides are clutch from Precision e-bike. Yeah. Well, back in the day, the owner of the bike shop we worked at, and we thought it was, a little bit of resistance at first, but they were making the salespeople test ride the bikes with them, like not on the same bike, but they grab a bike off the floor and ride with them and kind of talk to them while they're riding around the little area. They'd be able to test ride. Some people just want to be left alone and be left with their own devices in their head. But it did, in this case in point with the e-bike, like, oh yeah, okay, when you touch that button, it does this. Can you feel that? Yeah, okay. Okay, now try to stop. Try to slow down and not die. Yeah, it's kind of, it may be a little beyond. That's where, like, when you put it on a trainer or something of that nature, they're not going anywhere. And all they're going to do is fall off, and somebody can probably catch them if they do fall off a trainer. But that being said, it's something that needs to be thought about a little bit more, especially with there's so many of these e-bikes going out. And I'm sure some shops have done some thought through the process. And if you have some great processes in your shop, put it in the comments below and share with the community, because it really is about saving the community and doing the right things, that kind of thing. I'm sure there's a lot of forums on this particular scenario, especially with e-bikes, but it also goes down with all the other latest devices of how's the clutch work on the rear derailleur? What's the tubeless system we should expect? What's the maintenance on that? Even with wax chains, maintenance on that, and how to refresh and apply that. With disc brakes, when you wash the bike, when you want to be mindful of not getting on that rotor, that kind of thing. Safety. There's all these little things. The bike itself is, designed to kill you. So, try to make the best case possible of keeping them from getting hurt is the best thing. Oh, Saul Hernandez, thank you for chiming in. We're doing good. The end of the season here, we're still really busy. Thank you for watching from Mexico. Sorry, apparently we're going to invade. Bad joke, sorry. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of, I've been following a lot of Mexico and South American cyclists on like Instagram and other channels, social media, and that's watching the stuff, and it's really cool riding and so forth. I can imagine like being closer to the equator. You can ride year round, off road, all sorts of cool stuff. It's really great to see other countries, communities, and how they're like, there's a lot of Colombian riders and so forth, even further down, like in Chile and so forth. And, my head being so sheltered in where I live, I don't, all you hear about in those particular countries are either the beaches or scary stuff. And you're seeing a whole different perspective, like riding through cities and trails and races and all these events. And you're like, oh, it doesn't sound so scary. And that's actually really cool. They have all these really huge communities and so forth. But, it's really kind of cool to see the other than, I mean, Europe, as we know, is really huge in cycling, but then you see other areas like New Zealand and Australia and Asian markets. It's just like, do a lot, instead of making all the bikes, they actually ride them too. It's awesome. It's, and high level, it's like high level riding and so forth. And granted, I know there are a lot of, influencers are doing all this to get the clicks and, promotions and all that. But needless to say, it still need to see global community, basically, of cycling. It's just, it warms my heart. It's like, this is great. I mean, we all can enjoy this. We all can experience, and actually it helps us hopefully connect, like, as people, and barriers are dropped. I mean, like, I think I mentioned this before. It's like you get 50 people that speak 50 different languages, and you all go on a group ride. Just a short 30-40 mile group ride. Now, I bet, regardless of knowing what anybody's saying, you'll have all the same kind of experiences, have a community feel, calling out stuff on the road, to having pit stops and enjoying a cup of coffee and talking about the experience. That's the experience. The culture, the experience, the riding, and that kind of thing. You may not know a word of what anybody's saying, but you can tell by how they're talking, how they're presenting cool stuff. Heaven forbid anybody got a flat tire and you'd be like, got this. Those kinds of things, or adjustments, or that kind of thing. Then you can put it in the translator in your phone and figure out what they're talking about. But I think it's a huge thing. I mean, seeing that kind of thing, and this is just the off-skirt topic. It's like, cycling is for everyone, and it shouldn't be exclusive. Everybody is a cycling body, and seeing that through family members, seeing that through friends, where they don't have the exact skinny fit body like Bob here, but having shops approach them in more of a warm feeling, or group rides are like, yeah, it's all shapes and sizes here. We have a great time, and it's no drop. You can hang with us, and somebody will stick with you. It's all about having fun and having an enjoying experience, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? And either if you're a former CAD racer to, I just ride on the weekends because I just need to get out of my head. Hang out with some people and talk about anything other than anything else. So that's where the cycling community could really help. And I mean, yeah, those cycling communities, they teach each other how to work on, tubeless systems, and their community, they talk to each other, and usually I'll have one person that's the leader, experienced individual, and they'll be more than happy to help teach how to Thru-Axles and wax chains, and your e-bike and how that works, and all those kinds of things. But anyway, it's like, it's one of those community things, and this is great. Even on Shop Talk Tuesday, I've had individuals are from north of us to the south of us, and even across the pond, many ponds away. People will chime in and say, hey, just a shout out. And that's awesome. And that's just, just shows you a small channel is mine. And, I'm just a bike shop mechanic in the garage, and, in the Front Range of Colorado, being exposed and experiencing your experiences too. I mean, where you come from, and vice versa. It's great, and it's awesome. And hopefully you get some insights, and, whatever. I'm not here to end all be all. Just, call me out on something like, oh, no, that's not right. That's fine. Because I've been in the industry for long enough to know that I don't know everything, and I will not know everything, and nobody knows everything, because there's so much to the cycling experience, project, whatever you want to call it, from nuts to bolts to cycling shorts to everything else in between. Yeah, it's a lot, and a good cyclist mechanic or industry is always learning. We're always learning something new. It may be old new because we've not just been exposed to it, or it might be new that nobody knows anything about. So here we are. All right. Oh, space is not the only frontier. Oh, that's a nice one. Oh, electricity is. Oh, colossal. Yeah, I haven't. I've been meaning to look up your name in the movie title. Did you say it was a '70s movie or something like that? Sounds intriguing. I'm all in with geeky old sci-fi movies. That's my jam. Star Wars, Star Trek. I can't say either one is. Are you a Trekkie? Pretty all of them. Nice. Oh yeah. Well, Corbin Colossus, there's people like Josh at Precision E-Bike that's going to fix them. Fix those bikes, fix those e-bikes. Absolutely. Yeah, they're here. And, the ones I do ride for, test rides and working on, not necessarily I'm working on the motors now, I was doing other stuff on them, but, and that's not really my specific jam. I just had a couple that's good customers of mine. They have e-bikes. They wanted me to do the ceramic coating and wax chains to them and just kind of check them over, since they were newer bikes, to make sure they're all good. And then I provide a static fit for them, which they didn't get at the shop that they bought them from. So, and which they've had me do fits on previous bikes of theirs. So it's kind of like a thing. It's not that I advertise working on these at all, but I do advertise doing that services that I'm doing on those in any case. But yeah, it was kind of an eye opener on a couple. I'm like, these are new. Like, wow. Coming from being a service manager for several years, watching newer tech and being responsible of bike builders and being double checked by more seasoned mechanics and stuff coming out the door like this is, to me, was, I wouldn't say completely red flag. It's not like end of the world, they're going to die kind of thing, but it's up there that a level of professionalism on, I mean, back in the day, and this, I guess it's just because I'm old, because I'm thinking like a bike that was 2000 was the top of the line back in the day. And you made sure you went through that thing top to bottom before that customer got it, because you want to make sure that was riding like it's supposed to be. And, granted, that's like the norm price, but still though, it's still a lot of money and people are going to still equate to that. So you're going to have to put that effort into those builds. Should be anyway, and quite honestly, those bikes, either they're being built at the bike shop or being direct to consumer, because some of those brands do that. A person that's just putting the bike together that doesn't turn very many wrenches is not even going to notice, but they're going to notice when their hubs burn out after about a couple seasons, and they're going to need new wheels because it shattered the hub shells. Or just constant rebuilding, that kind of thing. So it's, I don't know. It's like, and then again, you're thinking like $2,000 bikes, those full carbon 2000 bikes that have sealed bearing system in their hubs, not loose ball, which kind of also raises an eyebrow or two. Like, really? It's not that much more at the bottom line. But then again, bike manufacturers have always kind of, I wouldn't say cut corners, but I'm saying it. They do kind of cut corners. Always have for a long time, and they still do, apparently. It's a fancy carbon frame and carbon fork and has new cues on it, but we have some junky hubs on there that you'll never know the difference until, either sell the bike and not know ever, or it blows up on you. And you're not as, it's not as smooth as it should be. I mean, hell, I bet they rode the bikes now. I'd be like, that better. Anyway. Oh, yeah. Formal classes. That's a good one. Isn't it the easiest way for manufacturers to save money is to skip quality control steps? possibly till those lawsuits come in. Yeah, that's just, that's the only thing that has hit the, there's a numerous amount of lawsuits out there, I'm sure. It just constant. I mean, I'm sure they have lawyers on staff all the time, from everything from, suing somebody for copyright infringement or, whatever, to, protecting their butts from a case. And I'm sure they'll settle out of court, once they get some details on it. Like a lot of those are, Yeah, I've been in a couple of those in a weird way, and it's just like, nothing good comes from it except for you do better. In our scenario, we had an individual got hurt because the tire blew out. This is in the 90s. And the process of the whole thing was, first you sue the shop, and then they prove that they didn't do anything wrong. Then it turns out it was the manufacturer's fault. And then they settle with the manufacturer. In this case, it was a tire that was defective. We aired it up with a proper air range. It seated correctly. They went for a ride. Tire popped off the bead near the rim. They crashed, totally effed up their hand, had to go get surgery done. Feel bad for the guy. He first was really grumpy with us because he thought it was our fault, but it wasn't. They tested all our air gauges, see if they were correct and all that stuff. So, we were a small ball and pop shop. We were puckering up like, oh my God, what do we do? This is going to kill us, isn't it? And like, proved it that it wasn't us. And they were just trying to find who they're going to get the settlement from. And it was a big line that we carried. And we didn't hear very much of it from our rep, but basically they settled. I don't think we ever saw the customer again. But it turned out that they just settled for nothing absorbent. It was just basically covering their medical costs. So the fixing the wrists and the pins and all that. But man, that learning experience for us going through that, like, ooh, we double check everything now. Like even back then, it was like you double check air pressure. You're not just grabbing the tire like, oh, that feels good. No, you get the gauge on there, double check everything. It was like, whoa. So case in point, this and everything else in between, there's a huge layers of liability issues and all that. And your insurance only covers so much, and that doesn't protect you. But at the end of the day, you should be hopefully doing the right thing of, trying to protect your community by doing all the best safety practices possible that you can know. And not everybody's perfect, but at least try, that kind of thing for sure. Let's see here. There's some scandal about paired bikes. Yeah, no lubrication in the bottom bracket and so forth, and bearing. There's so many different touch points and bearings and on a bike that need to be lubed that doesn't seem to has the proper amount in case. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's yeah. So as mechanics, and there's a lot of mechanics listening into this, it's really up to us to really make sure we're not just doing our job, but part of our job is making sure it's safe. Either fix it, and also case in point, make sure the cyclist is educated about it. And as a cyclist, please communicate anything that might be weird about your bike because it might be nothing and it might be something. So, and again, cycling is already a hazardous sport, just riding a thing. And now you're not talking about obstructions and snakes and cars and kids and everything else in between. It's a scary experience. So you want to limit that to a happy, joyful, definitely a shedding moment of life, and you're feeling comfortable about things and happy about things, and for at least a moment while you're riding, and kind of forget about all the other stresses that we're dealing with day to day, and constantly just becoming more bizarre day in, day out. It's crazy. But let's see. I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to talk about the bike is in my stand. And if you guys are mechanics here, I want you to join in on the conversation and what your thoughts are. So give me a second after I set this up.
Bicycles, hanging with a guy. Hey, I'm Justin, the guy in the garage. I do have a garage shop, and you see most of these tools behind me. I want to do a shout out to Jensen's USA, which you'll find a link below if you're looking for some good pricing and as well tools to fit or to expand your actual shop at home.
All right. Sorry for the close-up. The logo shot. There you go. All right. I'm kind of crunched, kind of tight over here. So this is what I got. I have in my stand, I think a last year's model, FX Trek Plus. Plus means it's an e-bike. So in reviewing the Trek e-bike as an old mechanic that's a fuddy-duddy and stick in the mud, as we just heard a whole bunch of my griping, this is a hybrid. FX is the hybrid model, and hybrids are great bikes. I mean, they're not a great mountain bike, they're not a great road bike, but they're a great compromise in between, which fits about 80% of the cyclists out there anyway. They're going to be riding mostly on pavement, a little bit of wider tire to do road riding. This is a 650B, which is actually a pretty nice, more touring, eventual gravel-ish type. So it's kind of like a flat bar gravel bike in a sense. It does have the mounts for a rack, which it has a rack on the back. Also front fork mounts to do those fancy little cages, fancy cages for doing backpacking, that kind of thing. Here's a set from Whitefoot. It's a Fort Collins local business. These guys just mount on the bolts and they have much adjustments. So you do straps and hold them on, right? So yeah, this has a lot of versatility for the experience, riding, not experienced rider, but experienced riding, right? So you can put stuff on there, go for long rides. I think it has like a 50-mile range or something crazy like that on the specs. Don't quote me on that. It does have integrated built-in lights front and rear, which is really kind of nice for safety, for payment. Great commuter, recreational riding. Hits all the checks, right? And it's around about $2,000. So, not too terrible as an e-bikes go for new, and they still make them today. So the newer models are available. I don't know what changes they've done with the model change. Usually they don't do too many model changes with a block of time, like 2 to 3 years, because they spend money on the production and design of one, and they kind of carry it over. Kind of carryover models, so they don't really do like this is a 2024 model versus a 25 model, unless there's a huge vast change in the actual bike specs or something to the frame geometry. And so usually it's geometry or a change in components, but same thing with the componentry with Shimano and so forth, that kind of thing. So it's a great bike. It's a great experience bike. It has an e-motor. You can adjust it. It goes pretty quick. It also has a throttle on it. Not sure how I feel about throttles yet, because that kind of feels like you're more a motorcycle than you're whatever. But if you're tired and you just want to get your ass home, okay, that kind of thing. It's a Haas. It's pretty chunky. It does have some weight to it. But, for the experience, it's a great motor. Customer loves it, but it had some noises. And on this one, the front brake was dead. It's like it'd have to cycle up to stop. Well, getting closer look to this, Trek put a brand called Rush. I never heard of Rush before, besides the band. Not sure it's proprietary to Trek or where they spec them out of. It does take mineral oil, very looking similar to the Shimano hydraulics. So I bled them. The port's a little bit different. The bolt's a little bit different, probably for copyright infringement from Shimano, I'm assuming. I bled just fine. It cycled up, feels solid. I won't really know until I get the front wheel in there and adjust it. I was doing a ceramic coating. This is one of those elevate your ride package that I have. Elevate your new ride. Basically, I do a cleaning and the ceramic coating of the frame and parts and double checking everything. And then it gets a wax chain. The chain gets waxed and all that. And also I provide a fitting. So that's what the service is in for. But I was kind of, thinking about it and it has been consumer friendly and how bikes have become less consumer friendly over the years. And some of those things really are highlighted on this particular bike. Well, number one, using a brand of hydraulics that maybe the bike mechanics are not that versed with, may not be very many videos, if any at all, on those particular brakes and how they're bled. Tech information's not, Rush, what is that? It's not a model of Shimano. It's something other brand-ish, unless I'm completely ignorant of it. Oh, it does have a brake little line indicator here. Thanks, Josh. Basically telling the system to stop rolling. Has all the, you can see up front here, all the webbing of all the tech for the e-bike portion ported here on what they call a bender stem from Bontrager Trek. Basically, it's designed to put a whole bunch of accessories on there, make it clean looking, which they leverage that to do the port here. So the benefits has mounts, has lights, has recreational, has the safety features of stopping and a throttle, and you got 8 gears in the back. Okay, you ready for the downside of this, of my professional no hold back opinion on this? Well, starting off with no name brand brakes, that's kind of questionable, kind of tough on that. What really gets me is, let's start up front. They do a hub. This was tight, by the way, and I had to adjust it, so it's a lot smoother now. But I'm thinking to myself, this is a 60+ pound bike, and you put a 200 pound rider on this. This loose bearing hub with all the weight and the torque, it's probably not going to hold up for very long. I would assume I would want a sealed bearing hub system that's a little bit nicer and a little bit easier to work on, switch out bearings if need be, but actually it would hold up to the weight and torque of this. So that's my one beef about it. Just to show the rear wheel. This is a rear wheel motor one. So the rear wheel is chunky and heavy, but it's, so that's where the motor is. This actually turned out pretty good. It cleaned up. And to take it off, it's a plug-in, pretty straightforward. Nothing too bizarre there. But you have to get underneath it. And then also, this was the one has, it's bolts on both sides, not a quick release nor a through-axle. So you have to make sure that both sides are torqued correctly and inside the slot correctly of the dropouts. So that can be a little problematic for an average person to fix a flat on, let's put it that way. And that's probably, it's something you want to double check everything and have it double checked by a professional mechanic to make sure it's safe. So that alludes to, the battery is internal. It's nice looking. The port looks pretty easy to charge and all the devices. All this stuff hanging out, I don't mind that too much. Could be a little bit cleaner, sure. But this is what really gets me. And this is what really kind of chaps my hide. And I know it really chaps a lot of mechanics' hides out there talking to them, is how all this stuff here folds into the headset area. And you're like, well, that looks clean. Why are you complaining about that? The technical hardship you're giving the consumer is this, and it's unwarranted. It's absolutely dumb. Because this here, let me see, there's, if I can find them, can't find them. There's headset bearings, okay? You got the fork in there. You have headset bearings, and the bearings are the cartridge bearings like these guys nowadays. They look similar to this, right? What's going on inside here is the cables, mostly the hydraulic line for the brakes and the shifter cable, as well as some of the port information from the e-bike stuff goes through there too. Goes in the inside of this bearing on the inside, and then it cuts through the fork itself. There's a cutout where it goes on the, or however it lays in there, it goes inside. This is a colossal headache to fix. If a hydraulic line needs to be replaced or a shifter cable needs to be replaced, because you have to disassemble your whole headset to replace any of those. Okay, they just added a complicated problem to make it just look cleaner, but you got all this. What does it matter? It doesn't, number one. It's not going to give you the aerodynamics, and it's a bike that weighs like 60 pounds. So who cares about the sleek aerodynamics of it? We already had a fix for this. It's called external cable routing. It just needs to be on the outside. And they've made them before where it's super clean and goes underneath. So the hydraulic lines don't need to be completely, even on it comes on the back side of this guy. So you still don't have total internal routing to the fork even. It still even sticks out. So it's makes no sense. It's completely dumb. Well, why am I bringing this up? Well, bike mechanics, they're griping about this quite a bit. Because it's all the higher end bikes, everything's tucked away and it's all hidden. That's fine on the high end stuff for the race bikes and so forth. The $5,000, the $10,000 bikes, sure, there's a market for that, right? But when I'm talking about this particular one, this is a recreational bike. They don't need to be aerodynamic, obviously, and they're recreational. Where you're causing a disservice to the customer is the complicity of this, which is overdone on a bike that doesn't need it. And if the cable needs replaced, which doesn't need now, but at some point, the housing on the shifter or the housing of these, whatever brand shit, if they want to switch up and put a nicer Shimano, they'll have to reline all this through the complicity of what all is inside here to lace it through, which is a whole thing. You just took a 15-minute job that would cost, like, let's just say cable and housing would cost parts $15, $15 at most. And maybe, $15 labor to put it, zip tie it together and, call it good. Shift it, get it all adjusted. So 30, let's just say on a high dollar amount. Let's say you get like the nicest cable and housing there. Say it costs you $50. Get it fixed with labor. Well, now with this, that took a 15-minute job and it made it more like a 2.5 hour job. So you got to disassemble all of this to get to all of it and to lace it all through, which sounds easy, but it takes a lot of time. So that becomes labor charge. Let's just say your labor shop rate is $100 an hour. Now it's $250 to fix a cable and housing that we all know the cable and housing at some point could have a failure rate, get bent, snap, whatever. It's going to cost you $250 plus parts. So you're looking at about closer to a $300 ticket on something that is only like $20 in parts. Believe us mechanics don't like working on these. We will, and we charge, yes. It really, if you're an older mechanic, this irks you because you're like, This should be a lot easier. And this makes no sense to do this. Case in point, when you look at the new Trek checkout, and this is not specifically to Trek, don't get me wrong whatsoever. This is specific to the cycling industry, building overcomplicating things on purpose for no damn reason. And this doesn't make it easier for them to make the bikes overseas or wherever, because they have to set it all up initially. So they're paying somebody or some robot to, set it all up. So it doesn't make sense at either end of the spectrum of it. But that's what you're seeing out of the complicity of they're taking the auto industry playbook and making it hard for you, a consumer. And you get to this and you're like, oh, hell. And heaven forbid you screw something up and then they have to fix something. Very expensive. So for this particular model, the FX Plus review, great concept for sitting, recreational. You have all those extra, they actually have mounts underneath, I believe, to do the whole, commuting experience, built-in lights, nice features, all that. But when you look at a mechanic's perspective of hardships down the road and the simplicity of how the headset is and some of the cutaways of what they probably should have done a little better on a $2,000 bike, I give it a C minus, because this individual that loves his bike is going to ride the hell out of it. And what is going to happen? Something's going to wear out. Something is going to cost them a lot of money to have done, which it shouldn't really need to be. This is already a huge amount of costs related to the motor and the battery and everything else that you need to have checked and all that. That may be a fail point too. So in any case, that's my honest truth about the newer FX Plus. It's a great riding bike. It's great until it's not. So needless to say, that's where we're at with that one. Just what I'm dealing with today, putting it together. It's going to be great when it's all said and done, but it makes a weird little popping noise of the stuff settling every time you turn it. But other than that, yeah, it was in, for the elevated service for a new bike, but the brake bleed seemed to be pretty back port. Kind of did a combination of SRAM and Shimano's version. Bled it from the pistons up, tapped it, and more of the SRAM style, then cycled it, made sure this was flooded good, then capped it. And it seemed like it came back to life and solid. It didn't cycle up like it was before. And I'm more partial to mineral oil system versus dot systems, because dot fluid is a little more damaging to the internals and only lasts a certain amount of time. So, I mean, it'll perform well, yes. It will last very long. I've had a lot more problems with those versus the mineral oils coming back to life and bleeding them. And also bleeding a brake system is just always a roll of the dice. Might as well just go to Vegas because it's, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you basically need a whole new brake system. It just gets problematic. And if it's newer, the brands will stand up behind it. But I quite honestly don't know, what is the Trek person going to do if it fails and they can't fix it and they need to get a warranty? Because most parts, if correct me if I'm wrong, are still covered under warranty for 2 years. Maybe it's just a year. Maybe they're just hoping it just needs to last long enough to get past the warranty part. And keep in mind, that's how a lot of the bike parts are made. For the most part, it just needs to last long enough to get past that warranty point, and then it's somebody else's problem. So in any case, that's kind of how partially, unfortunately, the industry has gone into. But in any case, the tech part, it's kind of interesting. Throttle, little safety things. And then maybe it's because Shimano doesn't make a version of this with the safety portion. Maybe not. I don't know. That's up to your e-bike specialists out there to tell me, because I don't see these on a daily basis, because I work on a whole bunch of other stuff that you guys don't work on. So, we're all experts in our own little niche. But anyway, it's not in for this, so it's not a problem. But it is for other things. But in any case, oh well, that's it. Time's up. Lunch time to eat lunch and get to work. I actually got to get these guys fixed up and finished up so they can go ride and still enjoy the rest of the nicer weather we're having here in November. I think we're supposed to have another 70-degree day in November, which is pretty freaking awesome for us here to get out there and do some riding. A lot of people on bike paths and get a lot of repairs. So yeah, I'm service. Yeah, busy. You know, it's all good stuff. But in any case, I hope you got some insights. So thank you for hanging out with me. Let's see if I missed anybody in the chat yelling at me saying I'm done saying dumb things. All right, Josh talking about one of his repairs. Yeah, it's just this whole internal system things are just mind-numbingly painful. Performance classes, sometimes you can use a wire puller. All depends on for housing, it's not bad for me. Well, it's bad, but it's so many bends in here that it's not easy to, you have to pull it apart to fluidly push the housing through. If it's just a cable replacement and you're reusing the same housing, it's a one-piece housing all the way to the back, so that's not a big deal. But if the housing got compromised somewhere along the way, you got to replace the whole 5 feet of housing. So you got at least 2.5 feet of torture to deal with to get it from here to there. So yeah, if there's anything else that'd make it a lot easier, but because the bind on these are pretty tight tolerances, they have to be to get it to go through. And it's just, I get it on the high end with aerodynamics and that kind. If your aerodynamics is a buffer, like a thing that you need to worry about, this is not that. But for road racing and that kind of thing, sure. And triathlons, sure. But for recreational ridings on any of the e-bikes, hybrid bikes, even gravel bikes, no, it's not needed. Yeah, this is, it should be pretty line of sight, like Forbidden Colossus is saying, it should be line of sight, easy to thread through, makes sense, but it isn't, not at all. There was one model Specialized about 10 years ago, old, 15 now, that had an internal cable routing going through the bottom bracket and it goes straight to the back, and the cable where it slides on was no more than 1 inch and it doesn't remove. So if you didn't use sleeves to get the housing or the cable through in and out, you're in trouble for sure. Oh, I froze. There we go. You're in trouble if you couldn't get it, right. Because I had one cable drop once. It took me 2.5 hours to get it to lace just that one part and lace through. So be careful even on the older stuff that's internal, and on the older Klein stuff, even in the 90s, they had some internal cable routing was kind of really tricky. This takes it a whole new level. You can do it. It's a little bit easier to do-ish, but you have to do a lot more to actually do one jab, which is kind of going backwards. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed some jibber jabber here on Shop Talk Tuesday. If you want to see this, if you're watching this on replay and don't want to see all the ads, watch it live at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, Mountain Time. And thank you for all those who are watching, especially those who are outside the United States, Canadians, those in Mexico and other and alike. We love you. We love you. This is our cycling community, and it doesn't have borders, and we enjoy hearing all your experiences and everything else too, across the pond and what have you. So thanks for hanging out with me in the garage. And please like, subscribe, share, and I will probably have a short version, 1 or 2 of this later in the week, so you can just get the rehash of the news bit or that kind of thing as repurposing to make it a little bit easier for people to chew through. But hey, this is more of a podcast form, and I'm really enjoy you guys chiming in and looking in and seeing what I'm doing and sharing your experiences too. Thanks for being part of this community. And again, if it's nice in your neck of the woods, please go for a ride. And if you're in an area where it's always nice, I hate you. No, just kidding. Maybe not. But in any case, get out there and do some fun riding and get out of your head. All you mechanics, get on a bike. Yeah, we're not on bikes enough because we're doing too much of this stuff. We need to go for a ride. And was it in like out east in Michigan? We were living there. They had like donuts and cider. Warm donuts and cider is a thing, which is, not here in Colorado, but warm donuts and cider to you. So it's a fall tradition out there. Should be made everywhere. Who doesn't like donuts? Apparently I like donuts a lot. Trying to cut back. Anyways, hope you guys had a great weekend. I hope you guys have a good week coming ahead. And again, if it's nice to know us, please go for a ride. Until next time, see you on Tuesday. Man, that went quick. Oh, here's for the specialized part. Is my bike okay? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one all unfolds.